I am Paul Atreides, Duke of Arrakis!
This is the second part of the movie Dune. We saw that the desert planet Arrakis, also known as Dune, was under the control of House Harkonnen. Its leader, Baron Harkonnen, had become even richer than the Emperor by mining spice, a rare mineral found in the sands of Arrakis. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, check our description for the full recap. Now let's begin. The Baron Harkonnen launched a brutal overnight attack and destroyed the entire Atreides house. They burned all the bodies to remove any evidence. After regaining control of Arrakis, the Baron declared his nephew Rabban as the ruler of the planet. This event left Emperor Shaddam IV and his daughter, Princess Irulan, shocked and silent. In the northern region of Arrakis, Paul has a vision of his unborn sister inside Jessica's womb. He confesses his fears that he could not save his father and might not be able to fix things before his sister is born. Rabban's soldiers then move deep into the northern desert to hunt down the remaining Fremen. However, the Fremen cleverly avoid them with the help of Paul and Lady Jessica. Seeing his forces disappear, Rabban becomes furious. When his advisor suggests he rest, Rabban kills him and orders his army to wipe out the Fremen immediately. Meanwhile, Stilgar takes Paul and Jessica to a hidden cave called a sietch, built by the Fremen as a gathering place during danger. There, Paul and Jessica learn that the Fremen are divided. Some believe in a prophecy that a mother and her son will bring prosperity to Arrakis, so they consider Paul the Messiah. But many young members believe they are spies. The Fremen core community suggests abandoning Paul in the desert and letting the desert decide his fate, though they make no decision about Jessica. Paul, however, wants to reach the Emperor with the help of the Fremen to avenge his father. Stilgar privately shows Jessica a hidden reservoir of water and tells her that they are not short of water. They have stored it in many places. He says their Messiah will turn Arrakis into a green paradise again.
Our Reverend Mother is dying.
You want me to take her place?
Yes, I do.
Since she is a Bene Gesserit with powerful mental abilities who can understand prophecy, Jessica accepts. She tells Paul that during the ritual, she will inherit the pain and memories of all previous Reverend Mothers, which she must endure. The ritual begins. Jessica is brought before the dying Reverend Mother and forced to drink a liquid called the Water of Life. It is actually a deadly poison that would instantly kill any man except the prophesied Messiah. Outside the cave, Paul learns that Chani and her friends believe the prophecy is just a superstition from the southern tribes. Paul asks why Stilgar trusts her. Chani replies that Stilgar himself comes from the south. Inside, Jessica drinks the Water of Life and begins writhing in pain. The Reverend Mother then realizes Jessica is pregnant. The Water of Life awakens the consciousness of the unborn child prematurely. Only Paul knew that his mother was pregnant. When Jessica survives the poison, Stilgar and his followers become convinced that the prophecy is real. However, Chani and others still refuse to believe it and begin arguing. Paul stops them and explains that this is not a miracle. His mother had been trained her entire life to withstand such poison.
It's no miracle. My mother was trained to do that.
Hearing this, Chani becomes calm, but Stilgar and his people still have no doubt that Paul is the chosen one. Later, Paul's mother tells him that his unborn sister has already begun communicating with her. She says the child has complete faith in Paul and that he is only one step away from his destiny. She also tells him that if he drinks the Water of Life, he will be able to see everything clearly. After this, Stilgar takes Paul into the desert to train him in Fremen combat techniques. He shows him the dangers of the desert and tells him to survive there for a few days. Chani teaches Paul how to walk on sand properly and how to survive in the harsh desert environment. She begins to care about him. One day, the Harkonnens enter their territory to mine spice, which leads to a battle between them and the Fremen. Paul saves Chani during the attack, and with the help of the Fremen, destroys the enemy's machinery and army. Impressed by his bravery, Stilgar gives Paul the names Usul and Muad'Dib. Usul means the base of the pillar, and Muad'Dib refers to a desert mouse that survives in harsh conditions. The Fremen now accept Paul as one of their own. Chani also shows respect for him.
What's your secret name?
Sihaya.
It means spring of the desert. Their growing attraction leads them to share a kiss. Paul, along with the Fremen, repeatedly sabotages the spice mining operations of the Harkonnens. Because of this, Baron warns his nephew, Rabban, about the decline in production. Meanwhile, Paul has a vision and tells Chani that if he goes south, he will follow a path shown by someone, which will lead to a terrible war where millions of people will die of hunger. Later, Paul summons and rides a sandworm, the largest one ever seen. This fulfills another part of the prophecy. Jessica asks that this news be spread everywhere, so all Fremen will unite behind Paul and allow him to travel south, where many already believe in the prophecy. The Fremen prepare to take Jessica south, but Paul refuses to go with them. He fears that his arrival there will trigger war. Before leaving, his unborn sister advises him not to fall in love, but to save himself for a political alliance. Paul then sees a vision of the person he would follow in the Southern War. It is his own mother, Jessica. Paul continues fighting in the north and destroys a Harkonnen spice warehouse. Rabban attacks their base, but Paul barely escapes. Meanwhile, the Emperor and his daughter believe Paul died along with House Atreides. However, Reverend Mother Moyam tells the princess that if Paul is alive, he knows the truth, that it was the Emperor's own plan that led to the destruction of his family. If Paul reveals the truth to the other houses, the Emperor would be challenged and could lose his power. To prevent this, they must figure out how to control Baron Harkonnen's other nephew, Rautha, who will become the next ruler of Arrakis. Meanwhile, Rautha proves his abilities in a bloody gladiatorial game in front of the Baron. Impressed, the Baron declares Rautha the new ruler of Arrakis after Rabban's failure. Later, Reverend Mother Mohiam sends a sister named Gaius Margaret to implant a part of Rautha's essence in a fetus so that he can be sexually controlled. Margaret succeeds and informs Mohiam that Rautha can indeed be controlled this way. On Arrakis, Paul, along with his father's friend and weapons trainer Hallie, tries to steal spice from smugglers. During a fight with the Fremen, Paul recognizes Hallie and brings him along, informing him about the lack of weapons. Hallie then takes Paul and the Fremen to the place where Paul's father had hidden nuclear weapons, enough to destroy the entire planet. Meanwhile, Jessica promotes the arrival of the Messiah in the south, and Paul has nearly stopped the spice mining in the north. The princess is aware of both events, which point towards impending war. In a ritual, Jessica receives the water of life by drowning a small sandworm in it and then extracting it, which she consumes. She warns that a man will soon arrive to take it. At this time, Rautha attacks the Sietch and destroys it. The South War Council summons all leaders to a meeting. Stilgar, wounded, instructs Paul to go south in his place, but Paul refuses, fearing the destruction he foresaw in his visions, and knowing Chani's death there is inevitable. The spirits of the desert then guide Paul to drink the water of life so he can clearly see the future. Leaving one of Chani's friends behind, he heads south. Rautha arrives in Sietch and kills him. At the south, Paul drinks the water of life and falls into a coma. In his visions, he sees his sister on that planet, near the sea, along with some deep family secrets. Chani arrives at the Sietch and sees that Paul appears to be dead due to the poison. Stilgar tells Chani that Paul is the Messiah and can only be revived with her tears mixed with the water of life. Using her tears, Chani applies the mixture to Paul's lips, and he comes back to life. Everyone bows before him, recognizing him as the true Messiah. Paul asks his mother if she knew she is the daughter of Baron. Jessica confirms she learned it when she drank the water of life. Paul learns that a Harkonnen would have replaced a Duke Conante. Breaking that tradition, Paul declares himself the Messiah, reveals the truth of everyone's past, and announces his vision of leading them to paradise. Everyone, excluding Chani, supports him. He then sends a challenge to the Emperor, signing it with his father's ring. The princess learns that it was Reverend Mother Moyam who suggested destroying House Atreides, knowing that the Emperor would eventually be deposed and House Atreides would rule. To maintain the Emperor's line on the throne, the princess would have to marry the heir. This was Moyam's plan. In response to Paul's challenge, the Emperor arrives on Arrakis with the princess and Moyam. Paul and his people begin planning their military strategy. When the Emperor asks Baron who challenged him, the Baron cannot answer. The Emperor realizes the Duke is alive. Paul didn't even need to trace Rautha because he destroys Baron Harkonnen's entire supply and support system. At that moment, a massive sandstorm approaches, but the surrounding mountains block it. Paul uses a nuclear strike on the mountains to redirect the storm into the battlefield. Riding sandworms with his forces, he attacks the Baron's army from another direction, while his foot soldiers attack from a third direction. Paul then enters the Baron's throne room, addresses him as grandfather, kills him, and captures the rest of the opponents. He orders his people to bring all prisoners to the residence. Following Paul's instructions, Halli and his team destroy the Baron's army and kill Rabban. The Fremen burn all the enemy corpses the same way the Atreides were burned. At the residence, all prisoners, including the Emperor, are brought in. Paul tells Chani that as long as he lives, he will love only her. Then he formally introduces himself to the Emperor and warns that if any other great houses attack them, he will destroy all the spice reserves with nuclear weapons. Paul announces he will marry the Emperor's daughter and rule with her, which breaks Chani's heart. For the Emperor's challenge, he asks his champion to fight him. Rautha steps forward and stabs Paul in the stomach, but Paul uses the same knife to kill Rautha. Then Paul approaches the Emperor. The princess intervenes, saying she will marry Paul and give him the throne. Paul extends his hand. The Emperor bows, kisses Duke Atreides' ring, and acknowledges his defeat. Chani leaves, heartbroken. Halli reports that the other great houses have not yet accepted Paul's dominion. Paul orders his army to advance toward the paradise. Meanwhile, Paul's unborn sister asks Jessica what is happening. Jessica explains that her brother has begun a holy and righteous war against the great houses. Chani leaves to return alone to the north, and with that, the story concludes.